I'm Diane Solway. I'm a senior editor and writer at W Magazine. And for our November issue, I wrote about Ingmar Bergman's private world on Fårö. In July, I visited the island with our creative director, Dennis Friedman, and the American photographer, Stephen Shore. Bergman first came to Fårö in the mid-60s to scout locations for a film. And interestingly, the minute he saw it, he thought to himself, this is my landscape. It's certainly easy to see why Bergman loved the island. The light is gray, the trees are gnarled and stooped, the forests are very dense, the beaches are very rocky. There's sort of a crude, raw, barren, elemental beauty to it. Bergman had made many of his most famous films on the island. He'd written all his scripts here. And the island really became not only his haven, but his muse. It's almost a character in his films. He soon built a house here in the mid-60s near the beach where he shot the film Persona. During that film, he'd also fallen in love with Liv Ullmann, with whom he lived on this island for several years. What was interesting about the way Bergman lived in the house was that he followed this very regimented schedule, that everything happened at a particular time. He wrote every day at a very particular time. He had lunch always at 1. He had his rest always at the same time. He screened films twice a day in his cinema. They always started promptly at 3 and promptly at 8. He told a friend that, when you're as chaotic as I am, you need a very firm structure in your life. Bergman had 9 children by 6 different women, many of whom he remained friends and collaborators with throughout his life. When he turned 60, Bergman began inviting all of his kids to visit. By then, of course, most of them were adults. The way he found it easiest to get together with his whole brood was in his cinema. The cinema was formerly an old barn that Bergman had actually converted briefly into a film studio to make his famous Scenes from a Marriage. For someone who made such stark and austere and often harrowing films, he actually had a wonderful sense of humor. He watched Ghostbusters, The Godfather, Pulp Fiction, Jurassic Park. The director who made The Seventh Seal was also a huge fan of the Muppets and Sex and the City. The other thing that was really interesting for all of us was to see how much this house was a kind of diary for Bergman. He wrote on the walls, he wrote on the furniture, he wrote on his bedside table. Most striking of all was the nightstand in his bedroom. Bergman famously wrestled with his demons on screen and off, and often when his demons woke him at night, he would jot down notes on his bedside table. On one place on the table it says, "Afraid, afraid, afraid." Another says, "Such terrible dreams these nights, no reconciliation." And here's another one, "Erotic, fiasco, the conflict." I think the intimacy of this story comes from the fact that both Stephen Shore and I, in very different ways, tried to capture the imprint of Bergman's life on the island. And one of the things that struck us was that his presence still lingers there so vividly. Bergman died on the island in July of 2007. In his will, he'd instructed his heirs to sell the house, his property, and personal belongings at auction. The question is, what will become of this place that was the wellspring for one of film's greatest directors? His estate is up for sale, and it's possible that it will be parceled off or sold in one piece. It could become somebody's summer home. One hope, advanced by Bergman's youngest daughter, Lynn Ullmann, is that Bergman's home be preserved as an artist colony, where artists and writers and filmmakers and scholars could come to make new work, just as Bergman did.